In a previous video, I went through the setup process and gave an overview of the Narwal T10, and now it's time to subject it to my usual cleaning tests. Here we have the typical mix of flour, dog hair, oregano, and popcorn. Unfortunately, this robot doesn't have clean zones, and I don't feel like dragging 2x4s into my house to block it off, so it kind of wanders around. I had to use keep out zones to sort of confine it to this area. So I'll just cut a lot between when it leaves and when it comes back. One thing about this robot that's kind of annoying is when I mentioned in the first video that its navigation algorithm was good, and that's true unless you confine it into a small area with keep out zones, and then it gets really confused. So you could see its cleaning behavior is a bit erratic. It doesn't, for example, go anywhere near the that little center island table thing, even though that's not in its keep out zone. But since we're judging its cleaning ability, we're just going to ignore that part and focus on the areas that it does clean when it actually manages to get back there for a second pass. I'm pretty sure they'll add clean zones to the app. I mean, it's a pretty simple feature for a LiDAR robot, and it certainly has enough processing power to handle it. But for now, just bear with me and this annoying robot. It does eventually cover enough area twice to make it comparable to the robots I've tested previously with this setup. And as you can see, it's doing a pretty good job. I mean, in a minute, when I show you the results, you'll see what happens as a consequence of not having spinning brushes. But it picked up pretty much everything except some of the stuff in the crevices. So it surprised me. Like, I thought a brush was necessary even for hard floors, but apparently not. Like, it's not the best robot I've tested, but definitely not the worst. But you could see that as far as leaving stuff in the cracks between the floors, that's really where the absence of the brush really showed itself. But overall, you know, it's pretty good. Pretty good.
Paused. Press the start button to continue.
So we're gonna take a look at the dustbin. I mentioned in the first video that it did a pretty good job of separating the dirt from the air filter like a cyclonic bin, and I'll show you how that works in a bit. But first I'm going to try to empty this thing one-handed. You can see it's kind of a small dustbin, but it's big enough. I think it's 400 milliliters. I'm not sure. I don't find the number measurements particularly useful. You could just look at the dustbin and see how big it is and how much dirt it can hold. Alright, so as you can see, there's the main chamber for the dust, and then there's like a pre-filter up top, and then that narrow chamber on top is where the air gets directed into the main filter. So the main filter stays relatively clean, and this is a very neat design that I wish more robot vacuums would adopt. Alright, so now it's on to the carpet tests, and again, this has no clean zone, so I'm going to have to cut in and out a lot as it starts to wander off. I'll only show you when it's on or near the carpet. Now, I wasn't even going to do a carpet test because I predicted correctly that it's pretty much worthless on carpets because of the absence of the brush, but I figured I owed it to my viewers to show you, what it can actually do. And it did surprise me a little bit. I use a mixture of dog hair and birdseed that I stomp into the little rug, it did pick up most of the birdseed, but it left almost all the hair behind. So this isn't something you would want cleaning your carpet just because it picks up some things. It's a terrible, terrible carpet vacuum. And as with all of my tests, I always run these things on maximum suction and let it make 2 passes. So here it is on its second pass. And again, it's not like completely useless, but why would you want something cleaning your carpets when it leaves so much dirt behind? So for hard floors, good. Carpet, bad. So now it's time for a mopping test, and I have this dried salt. It's similar to like road salt that you might track into the house in winter, but this is from Epsom salts from soaking my dog's paw. So I'm going to have it confined to an area again, so it leaves a patch of it uncleaned. We're going to put the BravaJet M6 on that patch to compare the results. So again, I'm going to have to cut in and out a lot as this thing wanders off because there are no clean zones. And I'm going to let it do 2 passes. 2 passes is this thing's default cleaning mode. So that's what I let it do for this test. And I also left the BravaJet on its automatic default setting. So we'll see how that goes. So the results are pretty good. There's some stickiness on the floor. As you can see, my hand, when a handprint is left behind like that, that means there's something there. It's not fully dry yet, but in a second I'll take a look at it when it does dry, and here it is. So you can see the stark contrast between the unmopped area that I left for the BravaJet and the area that it did clean. Again, some stickiness, so it didn't quite pick up everything, but now let's see how the BravaJet does. So I expected the BravaJet to do better here because it puts a lot of down pressure on that front pad because there's no caster reel, which is also why it's terrible at getting over room dividers. And for the most part, it did do a very good job, but it did leave one spot behind, as you'll see. So these tests might suggest that, wow, the Narwal is at least as good as the BravaJet M6, but spoiler alert for a future video, not the case. The Narwal is almost as good as the BravaJet, but not quite. And I'm sorry if I'm spoiling exciting future mopping robot challenges, but I do want my viewers to make informed decisions, and I do plan to release that video at a later date. So until that comes out, I just want you to know what the deal is. Alright, so the BravaJet is done. It actually made it back over the divider, minor miracle, and let's see what it did. So it left that one spot. And by the way, you could see different streaks that these things leave. The Narwal leaves like little tread marks, the BravaJet leaves little swirl marks, but they're neither of these picked up all the salt. One left a spot, one didn't, so let's see what happens in a future mopping challenge. Thank you for watching. Until next time, I'm Mike, and this is Mr. Room Bottom.